All right. So yes, I'm going to get started with this. I hope everybody can see the screen, and don't mind me peering off a little bit to my left because I will be also juggling this Zoom. Okay. First of all, everybody, welcome. I know that you're all excited, and I'm really excited to talk about building AI agents for enterprises. Okay, and this is meant to be interactive, so please do share anything so that I can quickly get to it in the chat. So you're all doing that, which is awesome. All right. So about me, I'm a senior AI scientist building agentic experiences, serving more than 1 million customers with $1 million plus yearly impacts. I've taught a few short courses for O'Reilly, um, authored a book on RAG in production with Haystack. In my previous life, I have a physics PhD. And then I enjoy in my free time doing music with my family, exercising, and a lot of activities. Yeah, so I know a lot of you have already gotten started, so that's awesome. Yeah, so let's share in the chat. What would you like to get from a course for AI agents in enterprises? Because that is also going to be upcoming. And so any topics that are of interest, please do share it. I have certain ideas that I want to talk about, and also where you're joining from. Okay. Yes, everything is physics. Awesome. And I'm also going to scroll up because I knew a lot of you had gotten a head start. So I see folks from Madrid, from Spain, from New Jersey, London. Okay, so we're at two continents already. Where else? Understand the framework that's platform agnostic and how to make the connections. Yeah, 100%. Um, from Orlando. Great. Oh, Indonesia. Great. Awesome. Another continent. Yeah, India. Oh, Istanbul. Very nice. Okay, job search, upskilling. Definitely. Okay. Yeah, so this is great to hear. Um, and so let me just talk very quickly about why. So I see a common pattern across various things that I've been working on, as well as speaking with people who are deploying enterprise AI agents, and there are a lot of common patterns. But most courses are sort of geared towards individual AI builders, which is fine because there's a lot that you can do as an individual, and rightly so as an enterprise, you're a little bit more constrained due to security requirements. So if you're building for the enterprise, the projected market is quite large. So it's $500 billion over the next decade projected, and you have more stringent regulation and PII requirements. So there's less room for error. You can't just spin up your own open claw server, and then scaling and optimization are important. Compare that with the individual AI builder, which is something that, I'm doing and everybody else, a lot of people are doing. And the projected market is a little smaller, because personally you're going to probably spend $10-20 per month on some subscription, and maybe a total of like $100 per month on various subscriptions. And a lot of us are using it for some financial advice. Some people are using these AI tools for tax purposes, etc. Um, and so you're less constrained by what you put in. Of course, you need to be careful, but that's a separate issue. And we've all read Twitter articles where some person got their email deleted, which is through OpenClaw, right? So that's a possible side effect. But if you're an enterprise doing something like that, then your company is gone, right? You've erased a lot of market value. But if you're an individual, it sucks, but you can create a new email account, right? Just wanted to contrast these aspects here as to what the goal of this lightning session, as well as like the future course that I'll talk about, is for the people who want to build AI applications as part of their jobs. Um, yeah. Um, okay. So one one thing to keep in mind here is also resonating with one of the comments was that a lot of this, there's no one size fits all solution. So the aim of this is also try to figure out like what are some of the common principles that you can take some of these when you're building, let's say, an enterprise chatbot, but you'll have different principles when you're building, let's say, a background agent. And a lot of this can be common patterns, and so they're to some extent platform agnostic as these solutions are getting more and more matured. One example that I'll talk about really quick after this, that we'll go to in quite a bit of depth, is building an enterprise chatbot. So this is something that a lot of companies are trying to do. It's like a really nice way, an easy, quick way to leverage AI. So whether you're, let's say, a ticket selling company or a restaurant, um, or let's say a restaurant platform, you can build these enterprise chatbots that allow users to access all of their data and just chat with it, right? So it's just a very nice experience, taking an existing paradigm of Claude or ChatGPT and doing the same thing in your enterprise. Um, the things that are important in this case are this needs to be real time and streaming. Um, Short term, long term memory is important. This could be skills based, and you need to be able to access tools across enterprise data. On the other hand, you could have a background agent. So let's say this is scanning through your leads, let's say through some website. Um, Now this could be event based and cron based. You don't need to have a streaming workflow. Um, and so long-term memory is more important than short-term in this case, right? So this is just to contrast, and we'll not go too much into depth in this session, but just to show you that there are various use cases. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Okay, let's see how much time we have. Yeah, so this is basically the mental model that is very useful that I've gathered from working in this field. Um, and so you need to think about the agentic harness, the context gathering, and then benchmarking and learning in production. So this case, monitoring and evals are all really important because you need to have a flywheel where you're putting your application in front of customers and you're constantly getting feedback and you're making improvements based on that. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about this case study of an enterprise chatbot. I've called this OpenAgent, but like all of you have probably seen something like this. Uh, you know, let's say OpenTable wanted to build a chatbot, right? But this is just a mock of that. OpenTable does not have this chat window on the side, but let's say we're building an open agent, right? That has this chat window. So this is where we're going to just look at, um, and I'm going to put the code for this. So this is public. All of you can access it and sort of get a feeling of what an enterprise AI system might look like. Um, Again, this is not going to be in any great detail because these systems are millions of dollars. They require months of effort. And so, of course, we're not going to be able to do complete justice in half an hour. But it will give you a good taste of things. I am going to pause here and just quickly see if there's any questions. Doesn't look like. Okay. All right. So um, let's go ahead and start this. And pretty much the only things that you need here are Claude, Anthropic API keys, as well as LangFuse. Okay, so this is how it looks. This is running in the local host. Um, for this mockup, there's very few restaurants, and then you can chat with it. You can say things like, book Italian for two tonight at 7 o'clock, right? Um, so the interesting part here is basically how this is sort of strung together. Um, and so let's just quickly look at this and get ourselves oriented. So this is basically a website. This is in HTML under this web folder. And then the chat service here, that is a fast API service. And this is meant to simulate a typical application where you have, the front facing, whether it's JavaScript or HTML, and then you have a bunch of microservices strung together. And so you can have this chat app microservice, which is basically it's a code base where a lot of people are contributing to, so it can live somewhere like in GitHub or GitLab, right? Um, and so you have the chat service, and what the chat service is doing is under the hood here, um, it is basically Claude. It's like a React agent, which is again a very common pattern, and it's calling tools, and then those tools are basically MCP tools, and so you have an MCP server that this agent can hit, and so what happens is a user message comes in, it hits Claude, and then Claude in its response says whether a tool is required or not. If it is, then it executes the MCP tools. So there's read and write tools. And then this MCP server is basically a wrapper around a database, which is SQLite in this mock, but it could be Elasticsearch, which is typically used for these sorts of open-ended queries. And then this goes back to Claude. Um, and if there's no tool use, then this indicates that this is the final response. And this response is shown to the user in the chat UI. All right. I'm just going to pause very briefly, see if there's any questions. Okay. So the question here is, am I using LangChain? That's a paradigm that you can use. So a LangChain, LangGraph. For this example, it's just using the Claude SDK, Anthropic SDK. Um, but yeah, so this is meant to be like a little bit agnostic. And then if you go to the main.py within the chat service in the repo, you can find it there. All right. Any other questions? Okay, great. Um, yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, but also be aware that there's a lot of people in there. So, if there's just one person that wants to ask a small question, that's totally fine. Um, because that's the advantage of these is that they can be a little bit interactive. But also, I'm looking at the chat window, so do let me know if I've not seen any of your chats. You can just um, highlight it again. Yeah. Okay. And then this is the MCP tools and data. So so let's take a quick look at it. Um, and actually we can take a look at the main.py in the chat servers because there was that question about LangFuse. So this is a fast API chatbot microservice. Um, yeah, so there's also an MCP client to interact with the MCP server. And then you're getting the Anthropic API key as well as the LangFuse key. Um, I'm going to just not talk too much about some of the wrappers. Like, for example, this is just a JSON safe conversion. It's not terribly important. Let's take a look at the system prompt. The system prompt says you're at the OpenAgent concierge, um, gives today's date. You can help guests find restaurants, check table availability, and book reservations. So some of the tools are you can use the search restaurants and get availability to answer questions. And then there's some guardrails. So before create booking, always restate the restaurant name, date, time, as well as the party size, and then get back the explicit confirmation. Yeah, so there's also tone guardrails to keep the responses short and to convert whatever the guest says into tool arguments. Here's where the chat magic happens. Um, so first of all, there is the tools list that comes from the MCP client. Um, and then this is important here that we'll talk about later, which is LangFuse for observability. And so this involves setting that up. Uh, so we're appending the assistant responses to the history. And so we're constantly appending the user assistant. Um, and then if there is no tool use, which is what is here, then you have a reply text and you return that to the user. But if there's a tool, then we're doing this MCP client call tool. And then we are updating that to the tool span. And we're also updating that to the tool results. Yeah, and then this just cycles back and forth like we discussed in the slides. Okay, there's a question here. Yeah, Postgres is good. I know Postgres also has a cap. But so in general, some of these NoSQL databases are good for just general text, and they have larger caps. So like MongoDB, DynamoDB, etc. So those are probably better options if you're having just a NoSQL database. Yeah, but good question. Yeah, so it's just the standard. If you have a relational database and you have well-defined things, columns, so then you can use like a SQL or a Postgres database. So in this case, it makes sense because you just have the restaurants and the availability well defined. But the NoSQL database allows you to have just data in the JSON formats where you're storing different sorts of keys and you're able to search across those. Yeah. All right. So now let's look at the MCP tools and the data. So in the MCP server, we have four tools. One of them is search restaurants. The other one is get availability. Then there's create booking as well as cancel booking. And then this is calling these three different databases. So like I said, this is just very geared to a SQL database, and you can choose your favorite one. Typically, Postgres is what I would recommend. Um, I think SQLite is just easier for demos, and this is why I chose it and with the help of Cloud Code. So in this database, we have the restaurants, which just has your name, cuisine, neighborhood, price range, rating, and description. So it's just well defined. And then you have availability as well as bookings, right? So this just makes it easier to have faster lookups and then joining them. So joining by restaurant ID to find like availability or bookings. Yeah. Oh, and then there's a question here for those of us who despise coding. Is Copilot Studio a good option? I haven't really used Copilot Studio, um, but yeah, I think using Cursor, which I guess is also code, or Cloud Code, are sort of just something that the enterprise is using quite a lot. But try to get familiar with some coding. What's really good about these new age coding agents is that you just need to have the logic, and it can really build a lot. So as long as you're willing to take a look at the output of the code, like the artifacts that are being generated. So let's say you tell Cloud Code, hey, generate this OpenAgent restaurant, which is like some common booking site. And then you can take a look at that, and then it might not look very good. And you can give it certain skills like a playwright skill. So that'll help it actually sort of look at this HTML, take images, and then loop back and forth and make improvements. And then, so you can just tell it, okay, hey, this banner is not looking good. It's not at the right placement, or that your images need to be better. And so a lot of this conversation can happen in natural language. So you can do away with some of that code. Yeah. So great question about this. I would say, like, what I'm seeing a lot is that you need to really have a good sense of what you're asking the agent and what you want to build, right? So I was very clear about the vision for what I want the chatbot to be, and having the spec. So in my mind, I had, you can think of it as a spec driven, but and so it helped me a lot. But I was the architect of it, right? Um, Now, I have seen people use Claude Code, um, not having a very good idea of what it is that they're wanting to build, and that can cause a lot of issues. So if you're not very specific, then you're probably going to get um, something that's written by like a really good intern that's just joined your team, and so it'll be a good quality, but it might not be what you want. Okay, so I can just chat with it, right? I can say like, find me a good Italian. earliest availability. Yeah. Found a great option, Nanas in West Village, to check earliest availability. What date and party size should I look at? I'm just gonna say 2. All right, so okay, so yeah, so July 10th, earliest slot is 5:30 p.m. for 2. Name is Adam, right? Okay, great. So it's all booked. Non-stable, July 10th at 5:30 p.m. Okay. Awesome. So, okay, so you just saw how it works. We don't have a ton of time. I'd have liked to go through some of this NCP stuff, but you can go through that. Uh, and maybe we can talk about it if there's time. But what I really want to talk about here is this idea of eval-driven development. The idea here is that it's you have representative cases across tools, intense negative scenarios. So let's say a 50 to 100 initially, and then the judges should reflect domain expertise. So that once you have a representative data set, run evals, and then iterate on the agent, prompts, and judges. Okay. I'm okay. So yeah, recording will be accessible. So that's what I was actually just checking. Smart recording with AI companion is on. Awesome. Okay, so look at this eval-driven development here. This is one of the artifacts that I think is super underrated, but it's actually something that's very common. Um, it needs to be representative. So in this case, as you can see, the IDs show there's searches, availability. The inputs are find me a good Italian place, and then the conversation ground truth is like what the agent should do. And then you have a tool calls JSON, which is what are the tool calls that it should be. Um, so this is where when you're like what you're the a good way to go is to have 50 or 100 of these, and you have the ideal output as well as what tools should be called, right? So this is your golden data set. And then what you do is that you would run these using your agent. So you would run these inputs, and then you would compare the outputs to this ground truth conversation as well as the tool calls JSON, and then see how many of these passed versus failed, right? So these are the results of the eval suite. And then here you can see there's the ID, there's a category search. This is the judge saying that it passed. Tool calls whether it passed or not. Turns. So this is the input. Find me a good Italian place. Expected tool calls are search restaurants, and the arguments are Italian. This is also a forbidden tool. This is involved in your evals. Um, and then the actual tool trace is search restaurants, input Italian, the result nonas, as well as the description. There's no tool call issues recorded here, expected conversation. And then you have the judge reasoning. So the judge reasoning is the assistant recommended non-stable as Italian, provided accurate details from search results, and asked for booking details without claiming to have booked. So this passed. And you can see the final reply as well as the transcript JSON, which has the back and forth user and then the assistant, right? So we can do this, and by this we will have like an offline golden data set and run of the eval suite, and then we can use this to decide, okay, is the agent doing well on all these scenarios? Is it passing a minimum threshold, or is it doing poorly? And this is very important for you to decide whether to push this to production or not. This is something that should be validated by the stakeholders. So this might be product managers, engineers who are deploying things, just anybody who's really feels passionate about the product, right? Which in theory should be everybody. So if you have, let's say, 100 cases, you can get folks to, 10 people to review, let's say 10 each, right? And to actually see if these were errors. So was the actual output wrong, or was it that the judge didn't do a good job? I just stopped my sharing. Uh, okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at questions. Can we build an agent that automates the promotion task? So this is, I'm not able to read the entire thing, but this is a specific agent. So let's say a LinkedIn agent or something. Yeah, so it depends if this is an individual thing that you're building, or is it something um, like a company's building, right? But in general, evals I would suggest are like pretty important because you want to test all the failure modes. Is this table available on GitHub as well? I am really interested in looking into more of those. Oh yeah, so this is available on GitHub. If you look at this OpenAgent and evals, you will see the cases, and then you'll also see the results here. Yeah. So what I would say here is that it's very important to set up your golden data set correctly, so that your judge is very clear, and so setting up your golden data set would require a combination of human and LLM judge. The rule of thumb is that if this is fairly straightforward, so like in this case, for example, your evals are mainly centered around your tool calls, right? And in this case, you can leverage an LLM judge quite a lot to just make sure there's a lot of coverage across these tools. So then the LLM should have the context. It should have you can leverage Claude Code or Cursor on your repo, because then it has the context of your prompts and your agent, and it knows the MCP servers, so it can develop this transcripts. So this is where it's really important to have a good plan in your mind, and so that you can ask the agent to execute it. I would still suggest heavy human review of these just to make sure that your evals are correct. Um, and then once you have your golden data set in a way that just like anybody who's not a subject matter expert can judge this, like for example, I think anybody can see that, okay, this find me a good Italian place should not go ahead and just book things, right? It should be you should just recommend a table, right? Um, so these are sort of functional evals. That's really important. Okay, thank you for that. And yeah, so whether you have an yeah, you would have another LLM judge for sure for looking at it. And then what you would do is, let's say you did all your evals and you figured out that your score is not meeting the threshold of 85%, or and so maybe it's 80%. Then you would start to take a look at your traces to see, okay, did the judge really hallucinate, or are my eval cases something that I asked it to unfairly do? For example, if like my judge was saying like I want to book a table for July 8th, and then it's saying no, I can't do it, and then the judge might the golden data set, the LLM that created the golden data set might not have had that date context. And so the judge is unfairly penalizing it, whereas it's actually doing good. So we need to change the golden data set or change the judge. But in many cases, especially at the beginning, you will find that your agent and your prompts are not doing what you expect, and then so that needs improvement. Okay. Next, I want to move to observability as well as error discovery in production. Um, so if you all are paying attention, you might have seen some issues when I was chatting with the OpenAgent. Um, right? Could you tell me what the issues are? Could anybody tell me, like, this is all real time? But could anybody tell me like what some of these issues might have been? So hi, I'm the OpenAgent. Find me a good Italian restaurant. Found a table today. Looks like Nona's table has no openings tonight. I already checked July 9th today. No open tables. July 8th, July 10th. Availability tomorrow. Yeah, any issues? Anybody seeing? Yeah, and feel free to unmute yourself and just say it. Okay, format issue. That's not bad actually. I mean, I was pretty proud of it, but yes, I do see that. as a developer, it's great for me to see this, but like you're totally right. I mean, this is not something I even spotted, right? But as a customer, you don't want to look at all of these things. Um, yeah. What else? So there's also like a date issue, right? So it's saying that tomorrow is July 10th, whereas today is July 10th, right? So these are classic issues. And this is where, like, again, I'm not going to go too much in depth onto like how to set up blank views and all of that, but it is so important. So if you look at the trace, um, let's see. So this is LangFuse. For those of you who don't know, LangFuse is an excellent tool, or you could use Langsmith. But these tools are used for observability in production. Many of you, if you're already developers, are probably familiar with tools like Splunk for observability, and that's great for finding errors and debugging. But these are not really like tool errors, or obvious log errors. These are more subtle, right? So in this case, what we're seeing, and all this is captured, is that July 9th is, it's saying that July 9th is today. Um, let's now let's now see what the issue is. Like, why is it saying July 9th is today? Um, yeah, so I'm trying to find the actual system prompt, but I don't think the system prompts are actually being stored here, which is something I need to fix. But yes, so this is an example of like something you would see in production, right? So, and you saw your test cases where they were very straightforward, they're very functional. But in Langfuse, you can see that like the way actual customers interact would be so completely different, right? Just think about how you're going back and forth with the agents, right? So that is very hard to know a priori. So this is really important for you to actually have this monitoring and observability in production. And so what you can do is pull down these traces from Langfuse, start with human error analysis, and then leverage LLMs to help labeling. And typically, you'll find that 80% of the errors have 20 um, are caused by like 20% of the root causes. So you don't need to like solve for all errors, but choose like prioritize the 20% that really matter, the important failure modes. And there's actually a whole Maven course on this and a bunch of lightning lessons by Hamel Hussain and Shreya Shankar. So yeah, I'd encourage you to just look at those lessons as well. Um, but I will not go through that in depth right now. Okay. Y'all have been very quiet. I just want to have a quick time check. We don't have too much time left. Um, I, I also wanted to open this for questions. But this is where this app ends. Unfortunately, like I had a lot of fun making this because I was thinking of how do I show this agentic enterprise use cases. I could have just talked through a bunch of these different steps, but I wanted to actually show you something, right? Something tangible that you can feel and you can build. And while it will not get you it's not building everything for you. Hopefully, this is something like you can keep these steps in mind while building your own agents for the enterprise, right? So there's the agentic harness, there's the context unlocking, evals, offline evals, and then putting this in production, online evals. And then once it's in production, all of this is really important for ultimately the ROI. So squeezing the return, make sure you're capturing user feedback and make sure that you're not just capturing, you're discovering errors, and then you're proactively fixing things for the users. Um, you can have a judge to evaluate the outputs, fix errors proactively, and what's really important is to find the balance between cost and quality. You might find that, with this token cost being quite large, that maybe you're getting $1 million revenue, but then your costs are like uh, the same amount, so $1 million. But if you switch to a cheaper model, your costs then suddenly shrink to $100,000, right? What does that mean? That means you've almost saved $1 million. Um, but how do you do this, right? Because like you want to find out what's the cost benefit, and how do you know like What's the quality change? Well, you need evals for that. So again, all of this is really important to ultimately squeeze um, revenue and um, gear yourself for success. All right. Really quickly, we just talked super fast about uh, building in building for agentic AI for the enterprises. Um, and there's a course starting. If you're interested, I have this availability for 48 hours as the founding cohort. So you can see that there's a huge price slash there. Um, and again, feel free to ask me any questions. Um, you have all the links. So when you go to this to the link to sign up for this course, you can also contact me via email. So yeah, so please do that.